Rich is a tree topper or a high climber, they're sometimes called. And so his job is with a pair of climbing spurs on his boots and a length of steel cord rope to sort of lasso a big tree and pull himself up using the strength of his body, and cut off the limbs as he goes. And the trees that he's cutting are old growth redwood trees, so they're 200 and 300 feet high. They're maybe 15 feet around at the butt. And when he gets up to the top, he he trims the top, as the job title suggests, and the top goes flying, and the tree actually sort of spins around like this. And so it's very physical work. It's work that he learned to do quite young. It's a job that his father died doing. And it's sort of he can see the writing on the wall. He is in his 50s. He's been logging since he was in his teens. And all around him, the forests just aren't what they used to be. And logging is becoming increasingly mechanized. And I think if you look at logging now, like a single guy sitting in a feller buncher can harvest 100 trees. And whereas Rich is maybe harvesting one or two a day some days, depending on their size and the prep that they have to do. So it's a very technical, skilled job. And I think whatever your politics are and whatever you think of the logging of old growth forests, from an engineering perspective, I think it's quite impressive that tiny little human beings have figured out how to harvest trees this size. As you get to know your characters, they do sort of like decide, I don't care if you think you're going this way, I'm going that way, and you just sort of are along for the ride. And Colleen was really difficult for me to get to know. I think because on the surface, I felt like I didn't have a lot in common with her. I felt like I had more in common with Rich, even though I work a very different type of job than he does. Like, he gets up every morning, he goes to work, he has relationships with the people he works with. And I felt like more kinship with that experience, I think. And I was more interested in that, in the jobs in the timber industry. And Colleen for a long time was a homemaker, and I've been joking that in my next book I'm gonna only write about loudmouths, because choosing really quiet characters who, like, they've been married quite a while, they can kind of tell which mood the other person is in by like the way they close a drawer. They don't vocalize a lot of the sort of internal conflict between them. So that was kind of challenging. I'm not married, I've never been married, so getting to know a marriage from the inside was interesting too. And I think that I find Colleen really clicked for me. I had read a story about a midwife in the Uinta Basin in northern Utah. It was a story in Rolling Stone, who had put together that there was an environmental contamination issue based on what she was seeing in her midwifery practice. And I had read that story years before, and some part of me had hung on to it, I think. But at the time, I was maybe like 4 years in, and I thought, it's too late. You can't make Colleen a midwife. It's too late in the journey of the book. And I ended up making her a midwife very late in the book. I think it was like a month before the book went to market. I thought, I'm just gonna try it. I was at a residency at McDowell for 2 weeks, and so I had the concentrated time, and I just thought, I'm gonna do it and see if it works. And that was when she really clicked for me, I think, because she had more agency. And I had a better sense of what her day-to-day looked like, whereas she has a lot of domestic responsibilities in her home. She does all of the cooking, she does all of the cleaning, she does all of sort of the emotional labor and care for Rich and for their son, Chubb, and takes care of the home. But it was knowing that she has this other sort of set of interests, and that she really has a role to play in the community, and that she gets to know women at a very sort of intimate time in their lives, and people share things with her that they might not share with someone else. And so she has access to a lot of rooms that Rich can't walk into. figuratively, but also literally because of her gender, because of the place and time where she lives. You know, the book ended up being about 135,000 words, and I left about 500,000 words in various, you know, Word files where I would move a scene that I'd worked on for years and think like, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to move you over here. I can always come back for you later. Of course, I never go back, but I feel better not just destroying it. And so I wrote a lot more than I needed, I think, and I did a lot of trimming. Like there were many times when, you know, the book would swell up to 180,000 words and I would spend 3 months culling it back down to 130. And then I would, so a lot of the scenes were, or the chapters were much longer. And the dialogue was more, was just more. And I would end up just cutting and cutting and cutting until I had it to what was sort of a reasonable length, I think. I wish I knew a more efficient way to do it. That's just, I just, that's how I can get to sort of the seed of it. Is like, here's a big mess, now find the thing that's useful in it. So I ended up adding Chubb. I started with Rich. After about 2 years, I added Colleen because I realized there were all these things that Rich's point of view was too limited to get to. And then Rich and Colleen just don't vocalize a lot of what they're thinking. And so I added Chubb because he is a good stand-in for the reader. I think he'll often like be in a scene where a conversation is happening between the adults. And I had worked as a nanny, and I noticed the way that people will speak in front of children, adults especially. They'll have sort of these coded conversations about something that's not at all appropriate for children. So they'll do it in a way where they think the children can't pick up on what's really being discussed. And that might be true literally, but I feel like kids, you know, they're really good at reading the emotional temperature of a room. They know when something's going on. And so I feel like Rich and Colleen will be doing something that they don't want to tell the other, or having a conversation with someone that might not get relayed to the other person, and Chubb is there, and so we sort of get to witness the situation from his point of view. And then also I think like I really love Chubb. He's 5 when the book starts, and that's just such an age of curiosity and wonder in the natural world, and it was a pleasure to spend time with him and to have a little bit of a break from the world of the adults of the book.